Munjal Institute of Global Manufacturing at ISB Mohali. We have two sessions now. One is on the infrastructure builders in nature by me, and next one is by Professor Chandan Chaudhary on accelerated digital adoption post COVID-19 era. This is the agenda. We have these two topics. First topic is for half an hour up to 4:30. Then 4:30 to 5, the second topic by Professor Chandan Chaudhary, followed by Q&A and key takeaways. Now, first I will spend my time on the infrastructure builders in nature. This is the outline I have prepared for this brief presentation. One is I want to explain the types of infrastructure in nature and how different animals build homes, colonies, and fortresses, followed by an example of Hero Corporation's Nimrana plant, which is built on the principles of nature's design. So the meaning of infrastructure is basically physical and organizational structures and facilities such as the roads, railways, airports, power grids, telephone networks, computer networks, and so on, that are needed for the operation of a society or enterprise. That is the meaning of physical infrastructure. Most of our infrastructure is based on transportation. For example, roads, railways, bus stands, airports, all these things are transportation infrastructures. So in nature, one fundamental difference is that there are no roads. If you go to Amazon, for example, or Siberia, or some deeply wild natural places, there are no roads. Wheel is the sole invention of the Homo sapiens. Wheel is, of course, wheel is the reason why we have roads, why we have airports, railways, and so on. But wheel is not there in nature, therefore there are no roads. But this question puzzled scientists for a long time. Is nature unintelligent? Because wheel is one of the greatest inventions of Homo sapiens. So they investigated deeply, and one professor by name Howard Berg at Harvard University, he's the professor of physics and molecular biology. He discovered that wheels exist in nature, but at the very, very micro level. And the E. coli bacteria, for example, it has a DC motor which can spin at 100,000 RPM to propel itself. This was the greatest discovery. Then they accepted that nature is more intelligent than us. No, that is the so in road infrastructure or transportation infrastructures do not exist in nature on the surface, on a substrate. So coming to the next examples, when you look at animal architects, some animals, they don't build a home. Some animals, they don't build a home because their body itself is a home. I will give examples. Then some animals, birds, they build elaborate homes to breed, to live there, to protect themselves, and so on. So if you come to body, animals with body as an architecture itself, you can see radiolarians in the oceans, mollusca such as the snails, conches, and so on, and the sponges. These are all the animals. These are all animals actually. So their body itself is the home. And let me give when you come to the builders. So insects build, for example, wasps, they build homes, or the honeybees, termites, they build homes. Birds build homes. Reptiles, amphibians, fishes also build homes. Not all fishes, some fishes build homes actually. And mammals, they build elaborate homes. And human beings are very deep into building homes, offices, roads, railways, power grids, and so on. Animals with no homes, they generally do the parasitic activities, like the cuckoo bird. It lays. So the responsibility of hatching and bringing up that chick will be the responsibility of the hosts. So such brood parasites exist in nature. So generally the purpose of infrastructure in nature is to create protected habitats such as homes, to catch prey and for foraging purpose, and to communicate between the members of the species, and to for storage and to create the next generation. So these are general purposes of infrastructure in nature. Let me give the example of the body itself as a home. No, so this is a nautilus which lives in the deep Pacific oceans. So on the left side on the screen, you are seeing the anatomy of the nautilus. On the right side, the picture shows the animal swimming in the oceans. And this nautilus, when it is born, there would be a few chambers, and as it grows, the shell has to grow. So it moves from one chamber to a next chamber, sealing off the previous chamber with appropriate mix of air and water, so that the entire buoyancy factor will be approximately density of the animal plus shell must be equal to the density of the seawater, so that it will spend minimum amount of time from swimming from point A to point B. So that is the energy conservation principle built into the animal's intelligence itself. Nature has not sent the nautilus to the school for education, and that kind of things never happen in nature. But the intelligence is part of the body itself. And as the animal grows, usually, growth curves are exponential in nature. So this is the equation, R is equal to e power a theta. That is the equation that governs the growth of the animal shell. Now, all of you must be knowing about golden ratio, Fibonacci numbers, and so on. So Fibonacci numbers are the basis for many designs in nature. Golden ratio, which is known as phi, whose value is 1.618, is also extensively found in nature. Golden angle is another very common feature found in nature, whose value is 137.5. When you look at a circle, if you divide the periphery into two parts, such that the ratio of those two parts will be 137.5 degrees, that is called golden ratio. When you look at a plant, the phyllotaxis, where the next series of leaves, how the new leaves come, they come at approximately at the angle of 137.5. So these are all the designs embedded in nature. And nature, when you look deep into nature, at the base of the nature is mathematics as the foundation. Mathematics is the foundation on which that many technologies that nature builds exist. So this is the Fibonacci numbers, how they add up together. Every two successive numbers will lead to the next number. So Nautilus grows like that. But if you look at the Nautilus body shell as its own home, it has a very complex optimization problem, which I'm explaining in 7 points. One is the home construction material has to come from its own body, calcium carbonate, for example. It cannot waste even speck of it. Whereas human beings are observed in the infrastructure projects, we waste our materials a lot. And when I constructed my own home in my hometown Tirupati, I estimated the cost of poor quality is about 30%. 30% of the metals are wasted. Cement, sand, all this are wasted. But in the animal world, nature in general, you will see minimum wastage of building construction material. Home has to be mobile. That is the second problem in the optimization. So the Nautilus moves along with its home, which is its shell. So it has to be mobile. Third optimization problem is it has to grow. Home has to grow as the animal has to grow. Animal grows. So that is another problem it has to solve. Then spend least amount of energy, as I explained already, from point A to point B in the depths of the oceans. Then fifth optimization problem is appropriate camouflage is needed so that the pigmentation, those things must be done on the outer surface of the shell. Then growth has to be timed. For example, this nautilus grows from one chamber to next chamber every 28 days, coinciding with the moon cycle. We don't know how these are all synchronized in the cosmos, but it is true that it happens. Scientists, by counting the number of chambers in the cross section of a nautilus shell, you can tell its age. The every month there is a new chamber. And self-protection. Animal must withdraw completely, quickly in order to protect itself if a predator attacks. So these are the 7 points that has to be optimized in order to create a balanced solution. So that's why nature has chosen the logarithmic natural logarithms whose base value is 2.718. I hope you know the what difference between natural logarithms and logarithms base to 10. So these are all extensively used in nature in building projects. The next example of colony builders, I want to give you the idea of honeybees. Honeybees, I love very much. I deeply studied honeybees, and these are all no. It's said by scientists that for every 10 morsels of food that goes into our mouth, 4 morsels are contributed by honeybees. Pollination activity by honeybees, which enables the fruits and so on. So if you look at the construction of the comb, the hexagonal shape has a beautiful mathematical logic behind it. If you want to construct something, you want to maximize the volume with the minimum surface area. The geometrical shape that gives you this is the sphere. Spear is not convenient for honeybee to get into and get out, and its outer envelope is close cylindrical shape. So it next best shape mathematically is cylinder, which maximizes the volume for a given surface area. And when you stack one cylinder over the other, the interface will be hexagon, and therefore you get hexagonal prism as the shape of the honeybee hive. The cells in the honeybee hives are hexagonal prisms. So it is perfectly logical and perfectly mathematical. But honeybees, how they arrived at that optimal shape, we don't know, but nature has done. Even the hive itself is described by a perfect mathematical equation called catenary equation, that whose formula is shown here. We'll not go deep into this, but just I'm telling you that whenever you look into nature, look at mathematics behind nature, you will understand very deep. Generally, honeybees hives have drones, queens, and workers, and they collect propolis from the trees, then pollen for protein, nectar for sugars. These are the three things that bees gather. Propolis is used for sanitation and smoothing, and protein pollen is used to create protein, fat, vitamins, minerals, bee bread, and so on. Nectar is the pure carbohydrates from which honey is made, and from all these things, it creates royal jelly, wax, chemicals, and even venom to sting the attackers. So a few points about honeybees. They are pure vegetarians. Bees are absolutely clean. They don't need Swachh Bharat programs for millions of years. They have been clean always. They have 12-hour work days, and they get up at sunrise. They stop working at sunset, because all their navigation is aided by the sun. If in the absence of sun, they cannot navigate. They do not defecate inside the house. When they die, they go outside and die, and they always share food. They adjust the population of the hive according to economic conditions. They defend their queen at any cost. But if the queen is impaired or physically handicapped, then they kill the queen. They don't tolerate handicapped queen. They are master architects, engineers, chemists, and navigators. When they select the site, for example, I visited, spent 3 days studying the honeybees in a field with an entrepreneur in near Vijayawada in Andhra Pradesh. And this is the photograph I had taken. On the right side, you see the a hole in a coconut tree where there is a hive. and cross section is given on the left side. There is a specific storage. No, everything is planned. Honey storage, pollen storage, brood nest, drone comb, and all this, queen cells. Everything is planned very nicely by honeybees. And the criteria when they select homes, they look at these factors: size of the entrance, direction of the entrance, height of the entrance, position of the entrance, shape of the entrance, and so on. You see, this study is done by at Stanford, and they select the site based on democratic principles. And if they find two potential sites, the scouts first go. They inspect the sites and come back and communicate the preferences. Then the neutral bees fly, and they join the either site A group site that favors site A, or group that favors site B, and the whole thing goes on for 8 hours or so. Then the majority of the bees will accept a suitable site, and the remaining bees will join without further questioning. This is called honeybee democracy. Stanford has done extensive research on this. They have designed different types of boxes with different types of holes, sizes, entrance sizes, and kept at different heights. So they have done all these studies and published this monograph called Honeybee Democracy, which I read long back. If you are interested, you can read this. This was published by Princeton University. So the purpose of the dance is richness of the food source, which source is rich in terms of nectar, and the direction in which that source exists, and the distance to that source. So these are all the factors of the dance. This is the honeybee dance. So is of two types. This is how they communicate. They communicate by dance language. One is round dance, another is wiggle dance. So Carl von Fisch spent his entire lifetime studying the honeybees, how they communicate, because in organizations, communication is very important. We all know that. So, but in the colonies of 30,000 bees or 1 lakh bees, how they communicate with each other, how they make decisions, these are all the intriguing questions. And he won the Nobel Prize for his work on honeybee dance language. He won the Nobel Prize in 1973. And you can read his Nobel Prize presentation, the lecture, Nobel lecture, on the Nobel.org. Please read, you will enjoy it much. Next example, fortress builders. I want to touch upon termites, which is again very fascinating subject. And these termites are, the colony consists of maybe several thousand to sometimes up to 1 million termites live together, even 2 million live together. There are male reproductive males, reproductive females, soldiers, workers, and winged reproductive. And this is the cross section of the termite mound. You see the air vents, and at the bottom of the slide, you can see foraging tunnels and nursery galleries where larvae are tended, and the queen cell where the queen produces eggs, and then worker termites they take care of they nurse the baby in. Then you see the air entrances, you see the air exits, and you see the fungus gardens, because they have to collect wood, chew the wood, grow fungus, and eat that fungus bread. That's their food. So this is the cross section, and it's very beautiful design considering the heat ventilation systems. So scientists have studied this, and they have studied different types of nests, the capped chimney mounds, open chimney mounds, and all that. Then they studied the composition, because the material for the termite mound comes from the mud and the saliva of the termite and the dung they excrete. And this is the composition. And again, the Nobel laureate Carl von Fisch has commented that how 1 million workers who are completely, one more thing I forgot to tell you, all termites are blind. They cannot see. So, but they coordinate completely and work together to accomplish great projects. So, and another Nobel laureate who is my favorite, Maurice Maeterlinck, who won the Nobel Prize for literature in 1911. He also wrote a beautiful essay, which I read long back in Parabola magazine, which is published from New York. You can read this article online. Blind Architects, very beautiful article. You will enjoy it much. And based on how these termites, ants, wasps, honeybees work together for the good of all, it has been a puzzle to scientists and even leaders. So there was a beautiful article on this wisdom in Harvard Business Review, Swam Intelligence on Leadership. So please read this article. This is based on this intelligence of the swams that we find the three characteristics emerge for leaders to manage organizations and projects. Flexibility, that means colony can adapt to the changing environment. Robustness, that means even when one or more individual fails, the group can perform its tasks. And then self-organization. Activities are neither centrally controlled nor locally supervised. Termites, there is no central control. There is no local supervision, but the projects are done perfectly now in time. For example, during the cyclones or monsoons, suppose there may be accidents like a broken branch hitting the termite mound. Repair work will be done immediately and without central authority issuing orders or any local supervision. This has been a great puzzle to leaders, managers across the world. And based on these things, many companies developed some softwares, artificial intelligence based softwares. For example, Southwest Airlines, Unilever, McGraw-Hill, Capital One, HP, Bristol, and France Telecom, British Telecom, and so on. So they have developed some algorithms to manage the grids of infrastructures. For example, HVAC systems in the large buildings or the power grids. How do you manage this? The algorithms based on SWAM intelligence are put into practice, and you can read this online. So if you type some SWAM intelligence, you will get. Or if you visit a biomimicry website, there are a lot of examples are given how SWAM intelligence can be used for infrastructure management. Even the SWAM robots, what algorithm should govern these hundreds or thousands of robots. So SWAM ants, honeybees, termites have given a lot of clues on building, writing programs for these kind of robots. Last example, in 1 minute, I will complete before I hand over to Professor Chandan Chaudhary. I don't know how many of you read this book. I read it many times. It has opened my eyes. This book is written by William McDonough and another author. William McDonough actually has a company, architecture company, he is the person who designed the Hero Motorcorp garden factory at Nimrana, India. And this building is, let me show some pictures. You can see, these are all some of the pictures of the building. And factory, unique features of this factory is a largest two-wheeler factory in the world. And it is manufacturing plant and global parts center. And the vegetation surrounds the workplace. It penetrates inside the assembly line also, makes its way into the roof, and every scale enhancing the ambient temperatures, air quality, and the visual environment. And this factory generates electricity from solar energy. It generates oxygen, irrigation, it generates or harvests all these things. Okay, carbon dioxide to feed the vegetation, food, it generates food also, this factory. And so please visit Nimrana plant when you get a chance. It's a world-class plant, and we are proud to be associated with we at Munjal Institute for Global Manufacturing. We are very happy that Hero Corp has done that remarkable work at the Nimrana plant. So final takeaways: animals creates infrastructures with local materials. If you carefully observe their infrastructure activities, they are not simple. Either to execute as a project or even look at the energy efficiency metrics such as energy efficiency, water usage, air quality, and so on. They are very green buildings, green infrastructure projects. They follow the principles of the circular economy. That means when the infrastructure is no more needed, it becomes part of nature. Swarm intelligence is embedded in their construction and management principles. So these are all the takeaway. And over to Professor Chandan. Thank you.
Pratap, is my slide visible?
Yes, Chetan. Yes.
So, dear friends, all of you, those who are connected on this call, the next topic is going to be about the need for accelerating the digital adoption. One thing we have seen during this COVID-19 pandemic, that people have realized the value of digital technologies. And we believe when you interact with organizations, both in the infrastructure and real estate sector, that they have started realizing the value of digital technologies. And for us to be competitive, both in the real estate and infrastructure sector, we have to leverage innovative digital technologies. So during this session, what we are going to do is we'll be sharing with you some of our findings from our ongoing research, and we'll discuss about what are the new expectations, what managers are expected to do post COVID-19. In fact, the way we do business will go through a big change. It will be extremely important that we understand what are the likely expectations when everything normalizes. It will be expected from managers who are in the business of infrastructure and real estate that they should be in a position to deliver projects faster than ever before, because there are huge backlogs, and you would find if new orders are received, organizations would like to deliver those projects on time and within budget. So we'll be discussing how can we leverage technology to transform infrastructure and real estate business. I think there is a need to enhance leadership capacity, and we'll give some specific examples of what are the various topics and what are the different subjects that we feel that managers who want to play a leadership role post COVID-19 should be geared up. And then finally, we will sum up the takeaways. I have requested to all of you, please feel free to type in your questions. Don't use the chat box. Please use the Q&A box. Now, friend, if you look at the managers, I think it will be expected from managers that they understand how can you enhance your productivity by leveraging digital technologies. We'll be discussing a few very specific examples. And then we'll have a section where we'll actually take up examples about how can you accelerate the process of delivering projects. So we'll be introducing a concept called multi-dimensional approach to accelerated delivery of projects. Now, with so much of problems happening around, so much of disruptions happening because of COVID-19, you will find in many of your contracts, whether you are a customer or you are a supplier, you need to understand how do you exercise force majeure situations. I think contract management and dispute resolutions are going to be extremely important. So for managers, enhancing productivity will be important. And in many cases, you will find your suppliers probably would have gone bankrupt. You'll find many of your suppliers will not be in a position to deliver the materials to you, even if you have an existing contract. So it will be extremely important that you are in a position to understand sourcing strategies. You may need to identify alternate sources of input materials. It will be important in a post-COVID-19, in a world which will get used to be contactless. How do you work from home? How do you collaborate with teams? And how do you collaborate with teams sitting in different parts of the country and in different parts of the world? And it will be extremely important to anticipate delays in project. And you will find many of your projects, even if you have given your contract to a large contractor, the large contractor may have many small contractors. And many of the small contractors or even big contractors may not be able to deliver projects on time because of cash shortage. So we need to watch out. We need to understand our inbound logistics, outbound logistics, sources of raw materials extremely carefully. And we need to do an analysis to identify the weak links in our network. Now, friends, one of the recent studies that we have done where we made an attempt to understand impact of COVID-19 on cash flow of organization. 97.6% of the companies say their cash flow has been very adversely impacted. When it comes to productivity, because of pandemic, because of lockdown, because of various restrictions, because of social distancing, because of lack of adequate digital collaboration platform, 92.2% of the companies that we have studied say that their productivity has decreased. When it comes to raw material procurement, 41.7% of the companies say that their raw material procurement process is very adversely impacted. Now, when you look at work from home, many organizations with a very short notice have asked their employees to work from home. And you would find when it comes to real infrastructure, 54.2% of our respondents said in our study that they do not have work from home infrastructure. When it comes to digital innovation infrastructure, which is more important than just work from home infrastructure, only 8.7% of the companies say that they have got digital innovation infrastructure. Now, if we look at digital knowledge, we wanted to know from our respondents, what do they think about digital knowledge? Do they think that digital knowledge is going to be a must post-19? 95% of our respondents said that they believe digital knowledge will be a must. Now, one of the problems which are really very acute in the infrastructure and real estate sector are the problems related to reverse migration of laborers. I'm not talking about job loss. All of you know the number of people who have lost a job in the country, and the real numbers must be much more than the numbers that we keep reading in newspaper. It is said the number of people who have lost a job is more than 120 million, and at least 1/3 of them are actually laborers. If you look at since lockdown, 78% of these laborers have not really received any salary. Now, 59.8% of the companies have actually reduced their workforce. So job loss is a big problem. Now, if you look at our construction and sector, both on the infrastructure and real estate, you would find that laborers, the migrants, they dominate. I had visited several construction sites, and if you, for instance, go to transmission tower construction sites where the migrant laborers work at very elevated levels, and you would find that many of these laborers actually come from Orissa, West Bengal, Bihar, and Jharkhand, and they have specialized the art of working at high altitude. And even if you give money, some of your local people may not be able to do the work. So when actual construction work would start, you would find that because of reverse migration, we have a problem. Now look at the example of Punjab. Punjab is slightly different than many other states. The people of Punjab, the government of Punjab, they actually ensured that food is available for migrant laborer. You have around 12 lakhs migrant laborer. They serve 2.52 lakh industrial units. And in Punjab, in the agriculture sector, you nearly have 12 lakhs migrant laborers. Some of them are common. So when these migrant laborers were actually asked that do they want to go back to their native place, 10 lakhs said that they want to go back to their villages. Now, at a country level, probably we have more than 140 million migrant laborers. So when the story of COVID-19 will be written about India, one of the areas that we will feel ashamed to read is the way we have handled the problem of migrant laborer. Those of us who live in society, those who rule the government in the state and center, I think there are several things which could have been done much better than the way we have handled it. So migrants play an important role in our economy, right? There are many people who say that our economy runs by migrant laborers. At the minimum, we must say that migrant laborers play a very, very important role in the economic growth of our country. Now, what's the problem today? Why in states like Punjab, where the government is ready to give food, shelter, you find that laborers want to return? So when we interact with migrant laborers and people who have been interacting with migrant laborers, we understand that one of the biggest problems is actually trust deficit. It will be extremely important that government, both at the center and state, and the NGOs and professional bodies, they start doing positive campaign about the need for migrant laborers, because the migrant laborers today, because of trust deficit, they feel if they fall ill, they will not receive the kind of healthcare that they need, and therefore they prefer to go back to their native places. And even if they have to die, they prefer to die in presence of their family members. Now, friends, if you look at real estate sector is going through a big problem. You have the vicious cycle, right? No work, no labor, no liquidity, projects are not completed. Projects are not completed, you don't have new bookings, and more than 30% people have been laid off in this sector. Now, let's talk about a concept called accelerated project delivery. And this skill will be extremely important post-COVID-19 for the managers. Now, if you look at projects in general, and if you look at the EPC contractors, what are the kind of challenges they go through? First of all, in many cases, especially for bidding in government projects, you have to submit a competitive bid, and often price is the major consideration. If you quote a high price, you lose the deal. If you quote a low price, then you lose money. Now, delivery of projects on time, securing margin becomes very important. If you make an estimate that you will deliver the project in flat 3 years. Now, once 3 years are completed, but your project is not completed, every month of delay starts eating up your margin. Now, if you look at the process of collaboration in large infrastructure and construction project, now collaboration is very, very complex because you have multiple entities, multiple departments, multiple applications, and there is lack of change management. Your project scope goes through changes, but if you do not have a system which captures what kind of changes are you making in the scope and what are the impacts on the cost, you'll end up with problem. Now, if you look at the applications, many organizations would use some kind of project management system, maybe Primavera or Microsoft, project, or they would use an Excel sheet or some in-house developed application, and you'll find there are several islands of information system. You have the ERPs like SAP and Oracle. You have the design software. You will have a scheduling software like Primavera or MS Project. You will have some document management software. You will have several applications within your Excel sheets. And then collaboration becomes very, very critical, very difficult. And then project cash flow management. Many organizations, if you interact with them, they will say that their project cash flow management is a very, very difficult job. You complete a milestone, you have an agreed terms and conditions, but you don't get your cash. And you'll end up with problem. Your project suffers from cash flow. And then you have the problem of contract and risk management, because the people who manage the project, they're not familiar with risk management. How do you anticipate risk? How do you manage risk? How do you manage contract? How do you manage project? So friends, there is a study which was reported some years back by Booz Allen, and is now a part of PwC's strategy. And so their study showed bigger your project size, more are the risks associated with time and cost overrun. So more than 35% of projects actually exceed budget and cycle time by more than 10%. Now the question is, how can we deliver infrastructure projects on time and on budget? Now there is another study which was carried out that studied actually 239 central sector projects, and each of those projects were more than 1,000 crore. And this study of KPMG had shown that out of 239 projects, 110 projects, little below 50% of the projects were delayed. Now, if you look at the cost of that delay, the cost of the delay was 1.57 lakh crore. And that was 21.3% of the original cost of the project value, which in US dollar at that point of time was $26 billion. There is a recent study. First of all, if you look at why do you have delays in project, one of them is your scope keeps changing. So your design keeps changing. then you would find that you don't have the skilled manpower that you need to run the project. Then you often have contractual disputes. So contract management skills are not there. Then you have collaboration issues. The overall knowledge that is required for program management, project monitoring, you find in many projects they are lacking. Now, there is a study which is of more recent origin. That study showed that cost and time overrun out of 603, 45 projects exceeded original budget by 49%. Imagine 49%. And that in terms of money was $33.4 billion. Then you have the problem of high land acquisition cost. In many of the infrastructure projects, you find there is a delay in approval and clearances, clearance from the environmental authorities. Often you will have problem. You find there is low level of domestic expertise, and you have, as I was mentioning, there is a shortage of skilled project managers. Then you have this question of what you call as the land clearance, right? Environmental approval issues. You often find these are the reasons for delay in projects. Now, friends, I wanted to share with you this concept of digital twin. This concept of digital twin is becoming very, very popular. So this concept was introduced by Dr. Michael Griffiths. He actually introduced this concept in 1993, wherein he had published a book, and subsequently, a few years back, I think 2016, he wrote a paper, a white paper, which was on digital twin, and there he also cited the history of digital twin. And when he had introduced the concept in 1993, at that point of time, technology was not very mature. So in a digital twin, you have two things. One is you have the physical product in the real space, and you have the virtual product in the virtual space. That is the virtual product in the digital space. And you have connections of data and information that ties the virtual and real products together. Now, due to advancement in technology and in science and in augmented and virtual reality, the gap between the physical model and the digital model has actually reduced. You have many interesting projects where the concept of digital twin has been leveraged. In fact, you would find several of my presentation on YouTube, which is around virtualization and digital twin for infrastructure and real estate projects. You could create the digital twin of a country. You could create digital twin of a city. You can create a digital twin of an infrastructure project. You can create a digital twin of a building. Now, as I was mentioning, the gap between the virtual world and the physical world is reducing. COVID-19 has taught us that we have to leverage the virtual world. We have to leverage the digital world. We got to extend our physical world with a virtual world. And virtual world can actually make the physical world much better, because you can do a lot of experimentation, a lot of trial and error in the virtual world. Once you have learned it, once you have perfected it, then you can do it in the physical world. In the process, you can get it right the first time. Now, I would like to invite Dipendra Samal. He's the founder CEO of his company, and he's a BE in electrical, and he started his career in ITC. He's founded Is Bim, in 2016, and I'm glad to tell you that he has been selected for the class of 2021 for ISB's Advanced Management Program for Infrastructure, which is starting on 24th July 2020. Congratulations to you, Dipendra. And Dipendra is going to share his experience of a project that they have done, which is on digital twin. So Dipendra, over to you.
Thank you, Professor, for the nice and quick introduction. So, good afternoon, everyone. And it's been a learning session for all of us, and glad to be a panelist on this session. So I would like to jump in quickly on the case study on HEB store that we have implemented digital twin strategy for them. So when we first met with HEB, I know HEB is a major retail chain in US, where they have more than 4 million square meter of physical property spread across all 42 states. And they have a store more than 80 plus that they have right now managing. So when we met HEB, so we were trying to find out the key objective that they would like to implement a digital twin. So we found that the first objective is that they want to add new design to their existing stores, which is spread across 42 states. And they don't want to compromise any construction standards they've been following in their stores. And the key challenge here, all their stakeholders are sitting from different states. The HEB headquarters in one state, and the architect would be another state, and the contractor would be another state. And collaboration was a major challenge for them. So when we understood all the objective and the challenges, we frame a digital twin platform for them by collecting. The first step was to create a virtual model of their stores, collecting the 2D information and the construction drawings that they have. And after creating the virtual model, we went ahead on the physical side and captured the physical data in 3 dimensions using a technology called laser scanning technology. And when we captured both this data, we combined together. We had this virtual model, and now we have this physical data. And we put together in a BIM process. Now, what is BIM? It is called Building Information and Modeling. So these 3 things together, we combined and created a digital twin platform for HEB. Now, what happens is, what is the uses of this digital twin? We then frame a VDC team for HEB. VDC stands for Virtual Design and Construction. It's a platform where every stakeholder can access to the digital twin and access the real-time data. So in this process, what results that we gave it to HEB is that they're able to find out what are the differences between the virtual model and the physical data. So it helped a lot in that design process and find out the gaps between the virtual data and the physical data. And then what we did is we converted the 3D model into another 4th dimension. It's called visual scheduling, where we schedule all activity for the duration of the construction. So which helped them to mentor and monitor the work progress at any point of time that they want to. And the perspective, the benefit that we gave is that in return, HEB were able to save at least of 9% of the total overall time. And that led to the save of a lot of cost in the process. And the second one, we were able to collaborate each and every individual who were involved in this process and to redesign the store, looking at the virtual data and the physical data. And that's where it saved a lot of money for HEB. So overall, what benefit they got is, when you have a digital twin, it is not only that you take decision on a virtual data, but when combined with the physical data and a BIM process, it gives you a clear perspective of where you are heading. And it combines all of the stakeholders together. And it was a very successful project for HEB. And If you have the next slide, I would like to see some of the physical data that we have captured for them. So this is a kind of a replication of the physical data in 3 dimension from laser scanning. It has accuracy of a plus or minus 6 mm of the physical data. And the next slide, I would like, this is the virtual model which we created for HEB. So looking at my observation is that we are getting more and more inquiries on this thing now, because when you have these COVID situations where you have less of human interaction, this digital twin enable every one of us, every stakeholders, to be in sync with the project management, be it a contract, be it a delivery schedule, be it the standards, or be it saving time and cost. And definitely it's going to be a key tool for all the construction projects coming together. So yeah, so any questions you can ask. So thank you so much, Professor Chaudhary. Over to you now.
Right. So friends, I would just like to share with you that let's now try to imagine you've got a big project, a massive project. First of all, kind of technologies that are available today, you can do what is known as 3D infra project engineering. So first you engineer the project in 3D. Now these 3D platforms today are actually very, very sophisticated. It has got a lot of inbuilt science, a lot of inbuilt technologies. Now, once you have engineered the project, you can simulate the behavior of the infrastructure project. You can check for constructability. You can do a complete virtual mock-up of the project. You can look at design for maintainability. Will you be able to maintain the project? You can look at operability and servicing of the project. You can do what is known as a complete project lifecycle management. So when you build a physical infrastructure, you not only build a physical infrastructure, you create first the digital twin. So your asset becomes both physical asset and digital asset. And every time that you plan to change your physical asset, you first make the changes digital asset, and then you implement it in the physical asset. Now, I would like to share with you, so there are 2 paradigms, the old paradigm and the new paradigm. What's the old paradigm? In old paradigm, several systems, you have multiple versions of truth. And in the new system, you have a single version of truth. If you have done the design in 3D, your 3D becomes a single version of truth. So in the old paradigm, you have multiple applications. They all are island of information systems. The ERP, the supply chain, the document management system, maybe an e-commerce platform, maybe a scheduling application, maybe some in-house developed application. But in the new paradigm, you'll have a single version of truth. So different team members would collaborate leveraging a single version of truth through a platform. Like Dipendra was mentioning about their platform where multiple stakeholders are collaborating and leveraging the digital twin. I want to share with you quickly one example. So this was a very interesting project that I had visited in Russia, an organization called NIAB. When I went there and saw and interacted with them, and I learned from the organization that a massive project, they used to do engineering and installation of nuclear power stations. And they reduced the project duration from 60 months to 48 months. And how did they do it? They engineered and virtually constructed the project first. And when they do the virtual construction, they look at how long does it take. Suppose it takes 4 years, they will see how can I reduce it to 3.5 years. So through simulation and iterations, they mastered the art of reducing the duration of the project, deliver a project that takes 60, 40, 60, traditionally deliver it in 48 months. And each of those projects is to be approximately $5 billion. Then they went around the world just to say that, hey guys, I can deliver your project in 48 months as against 60 months. And they backed some 20 odd orders, I was told, which is an order booking of $100 billion. Actually, when I went and visited this site, I could see the complete project in digital environment. And I took this picture. This picture was taken by me using my smartphone. I was able to visualize the project, and they leveraged augmented and virtual reality for this purpose. Now, friends, I wanted to share with you that a few examples from real estate as far as use of intelligent technologies are concerned. In real estate sector, there is a lot of bureaucracy. There's lack of transparency. You have fraud. You have several mistakes. You have a lot of records, public records. So there are a lot of confusions. For example, you can use blockchain. If you look at Sweden, Sweden decided to use blockchain for their project. So what they have decided that when a buyer and seller does an agreement and they do a deal and they have a contract, what they do is all parties who are involved related to this project, related to these transactions, the banks, the governments, the brokers, the buyers, the sellers, they all are able to track the progress of the agreement, and they have a single version of truth. There is security, there is integrity, and you cannot actually fiddle with the records. Now, one very interesting example I would like to give, if you look at India, you have the brokers. You call them in US as realtors. Now, if you look at realtors, they deal with a lot of legal documents, a lot of documents. They do a deal, and sometimes keeping track of it is very difficult. And over a period of years, they have voluminous documents. In fact, machine learning is extremely useful. Machine learning can be used for data-driven decision making. For example, you can figure out, if you are into sales, you can figure out by leveraging machine learning, you can actually predict that is your prospect going to buy? What is the buying pattern of the prospect, right? You can figure out what are the conditions that you need to follow, what are the do's such that you strike the deal, what are the don'ts, what can lead to a risk and you may lose the deal. In fact, chatbots are becoming very, very important. They have become extremely useful in servicing customer. You have a nice example of IKEA, the IKEA Place apps, wherein this app uses augmented reality to allow users to see how a chosen furniture would look in their homes. Extremely useful. In fact, Professor Pratap was talking about Nimrana, the Hero Motocore factory. I had the privilege to be a part of that inaugural ceremony of that building when the chief minister came and inaugurated, and Dr. Pawan Munjal delivered an outstanding talk. And if you have not visited that factory, you must visit. In fact, this whole concept of vertical forest is also becoming very, very popular. You have this Egypt with vertical forest. In South China, you have this Liuzhou forest city, where you have 40,000 trees, 1 million plants on buildings, and it annually absorbs 10,000 tons of carbon dioxide and 57 tons of pollutants, and it produces 900 tons of oxygen. 3D printing is becoming very, very popular. In fact, we are talking about affordable housing program in India. I think 3D printing can be very, very useful. In El Salvador, they have been able to print a house in $4,000. So you print a house, then you have the human workers come, they install the windows, the doors, the plumbing, and they do the electrical systems work, and they have been able to bring down the cost of 3D printed houses. In fact, we had a team at ISB. These were engineering students. They were doing our technology entrepreneurship program. And I had the privilege to look at their project. And one of these students actually started her own company, incubated at IIIT Hyderabad, which is in 3D printing of construction sites. I think as far as managers in the real estate is concerned, leaders in real estate, leaders in infrastructure sector, they got to learn infrastructure financing. If we want to work and if you want to be a leader in the infrastructure segment, we need to understand infrastructure economics. We need to understand infrastructure regulations. Regulations are going through a lot of change. We've got to understand infrastructure regulations. Many of our projects get delayed because of environmental issues. So social and environmental issues in infrastructure is very, very important. I think infrastructure project management is very important. If we know it well, we can deliver projects on time, on schedule. Contract management, understanding legal issues, doing dispute resolution, understanding how do you do stakeholder analysis. I think government is going to have a shortage of funds. Public-private partnership will be extremely important. Knowledge of how do you make public-private partnership work is very, very important. Strategic planning for infrastructure. How do you do negotiations is a very important subject. How do you manage teams? How do you carry out change? How do you leverage digital technologies for infrastructure business? And also understanding how do you develop entrepreneurial venture for infrastructure. Friends, I would like to sum up the 5 takeaways. I think in post-COVID-19 era, expectations from managers and leaders would change. Infrastructure will face severe challenges, including cash crunch. I think digital technology will be a must for competitive edge in the infrastructure and real estate sector. And the world is now getting used to operate in a contactless fashion. So we need to understand how do we do remote collaboration. Managers need to reboot their knowledge and they need to reboot their leadership skills. And I think ISB's advanced management program, which is commencing on 24 July, which is for the infrastructure and real estate professionals, is a very good opportunity. And I hope some of you would sign up, and I will look forward to interacting with you. Now, I open up the session for question answer. So there is a question that in the why we are running favoritism in the project execution, and why can't banks accept having part-time material? So, I couldn't understand the question properly. If you again type it out, I think it'll be useful. You can type that again. And next question is for Professor Pratap. It's an amazing content and relevant to nature. And he said that thanks for sharing some of your readings. Honeybee Democracy, Animal Architecture, Swarm Intelligence, and Cradle to Cradle. This are very interesting reading. And yeah, so in case you have some more questions, please let us know. We'll be very happy to take up those questions. Any question, please type on. Yeah, there's a question, how to handle force majeure, right? How to handle force majeure is the question, right? And just a moment, let me just. Yeah, I think force majeure is you will find all major contracts. You will have a clause which is due to act of God. Like a cyclone. You had in West Bengal now that massive cyclone. So the you will find even from government they have announced that is eligible for force majeure. So you will find many of your contractors, suppliers, and customers would actually exercise force majeure. So when somebody violates contract clause, you can take them to court. But if it is because of an act of God, you can't take them to court. So understanding of force majeure is very, very important.
Professor Chanda, there has been a question which is generally we have the 3D model of the project beforehand, but how is the real-time status of the building or a construction project known to every stakeholder?
Yeah, so I still remember when I went to this to visit this organization in Moscow. So they have the digital model of the project. So the entire project has been engineered. So you have the digital model, and as the actual construction happening, you can actually see the physical model. Not only that, you can see the delta, the difference. So there is a pillar which should have been first installed before some structure in some other place. You'll be able to see actually that there is a deviation. So the main purpose of leveraging such technology is that not just creating the model digitally, but as you do the construction in the virtual world, you understand the problem, you fix it, you do the design correction, but finally when you start constructing it physically, you keep comparing it with your digital model. Yes, Avi, is there any other question?
Yeah, so the next question is coming from Sanjeev Bhatt, whose question is, BIM implementation in India is used only for 3D visualization. What do you see future of BIM?
Sorry, what do we see future of?
Future of BIM, Building Information Management.
Yeah. So I think the building information management is becoming very, very sophisticated. You find now majority of the big contractors are using some kind of building information management system. In fact, there are many building information management systems. Initially, the building information management systems used to be very primitive. It used to be just kind of a virtual mock-up, but you did not have much of intelligence built into it. Now, the new generation building information management systems have got a lot of intelligence built into it.
All right.
So there's a question. There's a question. In economy like India, cost is more important. How much relevant and what could drive Indian infrastructure project to follow digital tools and experiment with that? Now, actually, I have done a lot of studies in many organizations in the infrastructure segment to really understand how digital technologies can be leveraged. So if you really look at, imagine you got a project which is $1 billion project and you have taken up. By the way, EPC projects will increase now. You will find a lot of innovative model which government was trying may actually die post COVID-19, at least for some period of time. So you will see more of EPC projects. And in EPC project, if you have a project which is $1 billion and you thought you will deliver the project in 3 years, and the moment project starts extending, you have the problem of time overrun. You spend 1 month, you have eaten up some margin. 2 months, 3 months, after 4 months, you start making loss. So if you look at the investment that you need for such technologies compared to the benefit, I think investment is very nominal. The ROI is very attractive. And good thing about it is that you are creating assets that you can reuse. So tomorrow when you are do a quote for a similar project, you have to do costing. You can do very accurate costing because as you will keep doing project, your ability to create those costing model will increase. So I think ROIs are very attractive. Avi, is there any other question?
Yeah, so the next question is from Rajiv Kumar, who's asking about our upcoming ISBs and infrastructure management course. So if you can give a brief about it, I think that should answer this query.
Yeah. So if you look at this, our the program, which is advanced management program for infrastructure. First of all, this program is for experienced professionals. This is for working professionals. And we have a total of 4 residency. The program starts on 24th July. And we have been investing a lot of money in our digital infrastructure. In fact, our full-time PGP program, which started on 1st June, we started it on digital platform. So our advanced management program starts on 24th July. The first residency will be leveraging our digital technology. And in this program, you not only learn just theories, it is a course which is practice oriented because the program is for experienced professionals. Professors, they come from different parts of the world. All our professors are very experienced professors. They run case studies in the class. So the learning pedagogy is the experience-based learning. And when you start this course, you become a part of a team. Every team is given a project, which is a real life project. Over a period of 1 year, you not only go through courses, you actually apply management concept. We call it action learning project. So by the end of the year, you have not only graduated from this course, but you have actually done a project by using scientific management concepts, and professors mentor the student. Yes, Avi, is there any other question?
Correct. So there are quite a few questions. So the question is on the, in today's world, the contract digitization is not in place. So can we take advantage, can we change the same to take advantage? So basically, I guess the question is on whether we can do the contracts on a digitized platform or not.
Yeah. So if you look at blockchain, in fact, we have done couple of projects. Last year, some of our students doing advanced management program did a project on use of smart contract in blockchain. So you can use smart contract in blockchain. So smart contract is just like an algorithm. So it's a computer program. So imagine if you have 500-page contract that is converted into a computer program. Now, so as you execute your project based on terms and conditions, the supplier gets paid. You have no dispute because you have a single version of truth. You cannot doctor with the fact, and the people who are associated with the contract, they all agree on what has been completed and what has not been completed. So smart contract of blockchain can be very useful in digitally managing the contract.
Great. So the next one from Rohan, who's his question stands at what steps the real estate developers should take to boost demand in residential sector.
So I think the traditional demand, the traditional mode of doing business, where you had a lot of physical contact. If you have a big potential buyer, you go and meet up, or you have lunch or dinner. I think the doing business post COVID-19 will be quite different from how it is going to be in future. So you have to leverage. If you want to increase the demand, I think the customers must feel, the potential buyers must feel that, wow, this looks like a great stuff. It looks like a very exciting offer, and they should feel like that they cannot resist the offer. And I think the digital platforms, digital campaign are going to play a very important role in increasing your chances of getting an order, because overall the real estate sector is in bad state. And what our government is doing right now, there are some good initiatives, but I think that is not good enough for increasing the demand in the real estate sector. You have to do a lot of innovation. The way you engage with your potential buyer, your customer centricity got to increase. Yes, Avi,
Right.
what's the next question?
Correct. So the next one is from Mr. Nagaraju, whose question is, what skills can be learned in infrastructure management program?
Yeah, I think the skills that you acquire in the infrastructure management program, one is that general management courses. Obviously, one got to learn how should you act as a leader, how should you act as a senior manager, what should be the decision-making process, how should you manage team, how should you motivate team, how should you negotiate with your supplier, how should you negotiate with your customer. Those are general management skills. But I think that's not enough. You also got to have the infrastructure and real estate specific knowledge. For example, on real estate, we have two subjects. We teach introduction to real estate management and also advanced aspects of real estate management. So last batch, Tony, who taught this subject, who came from US, he's considered to be one of the best in the world in real estate. As far as infrastructure is concerned, I think knowledge on regulations, knowledge on contract, knowledge on conflict resolution, knowledge on legal issues, knowledge on environmental issues, they all become very, very important. We run this course from our infrastructure institute, which is called Poonj Lloyd Institute for Infrastructure Management. This institute was set up along with MIT as an associate partner. Any other question? Avi, any other question?
Correct. So there are two more questions. One is from Mr. Baljinder. The question remains, how do you handle known unknowns like geological surprises, like changes in the rock strata in digital twins when executing underground and road tunnels?
Yeah, this is a very interesting project. I remember we were engaged in one of the projects in Arunachal Pradesh. So especially in the Himalayan terrain, you have a lot of unknowns. Now, what really happened when you create a digital twin, you are able to at least you will have some data which is available. But in tunnels and all that, especially in the Himalayan regions, you have a lot of unknown. So you can at least simulate that what if. You can do a lot of what if scenarios. So I wouldn't say that all risks get mitigated, but you are able to at least anticipate and think of all those uncertainties and do some kind of scenarios. What if, all of a sudden there is an earthquake in an area and it is at a scale that you never expected, and your whole plan goes for a toss. So at least digital technologies and digital twin enables you to do a lot of if-then scenarios. In fact, there are models called multi-physics model. So those multi-physics model helps you to do complex modeling of phenomenon which are like earthquake and so on and so forth. But still, I would say that, especially in the Himalayan region, you do have problems. For example, I remember we were doing assessment of one of the plants, which was a plant. There is a plan to set it up in an area which sees a cyclone once every 10 years. And if you look at the wind speed that is there in Indian Standard Time, that's much below a cyclone. So we had told to the client at that point of time that since you are setting up the plant in an area which is cyclone prone, you need to run your design. What happens to your design if there is a cyclone? You have seen in West Bengal, you had a wind speed of 135. In fact, Avi, who is right talking, he saw that very recently because he has been there. So I think these are difficult, but you can at least minimize the risk. Yes, Avi, what's the next question?
Well, the next question is that is the PPT also available for us? Yes, we will share the PPTs with
Share
with
the
all
video
of you.
recording. Yeah, we'll share the
Yes,
video
we'll-
recording.
Correct. Now moving to the next, the question is from Nihal Sarna. The question remains with contractors and employees cash flow affected, do you think the digital transformation will happen immediately post COVID-19 as change requires cost?
I think one thing is very clear, right? We can see it even at our school because we keep telling ourselves that we got to walk the talk. We not only advocate digital technologies, we made huge investment in digital technologies. Because on a fine day, just before lockdown, we realized that future of our students is at a risk. So we told our students, hey, we want all of you to go back home and we are going to switch online. And I think people have realized that they have to make investment in digital technologies. MSMEs, we know in real estate and infrastructure sector, many big contractors would involve MSMEs. We made an appeal to the government through CII. I prepared a note and we sent across to government that we believe government should make investment in digital infrastructure. Government shouldn't just make investment in highways, which are and roads, but government should also make investment, and also large corporates should make investment in digital platform, which can be leveraged by smaller companies for collaboration. As far as big companies are concerned, I think it is going to be extremely important to leverage digital technologies. As smaller companies got to increase their reach because demand is not going to go up, drastically. It's going to take some time. So your reach to your customer got to increase, and you can increase your reach to your customer by investing into digital technologies. You need to collaborate with your supplier. You can do better collaboration if you have a digital platform. Your different teams sitting in different places need to collaborate. So you need to make investment in digital innovation platform. And in the beginning of my presentation, I was mentioning that only 8% of the companies have got innovation platform, which is digital. So I think I would expect investment in digital technologies to go up because of COVID-19, because pandemic has given a big lesson to people that you cannot delay digital initiatives in your organization. Yes, Avi, what's the next question?
Well, so the next question is, government should include condition for BIM and digital twin concept before tendering to save huge public money, countering corruption and quality. Is there any initiative from ISP in terms of pushing government to invest on, digital digital technologies?
Yeah, in fact, in almost every seminar in some form, I keep advocating that, for example, if you look at mines, at a India level, we got to create a digital twin of all the mineral resources. Now, if we do that, and that's not difficult actually, if we do that, there are 3D modeling technologies for mines, for mineral assets, for natural resources. So I think, when you do tendering of mines, corruption will be much less. And not only that, you have problem not because of people are corrupt. You often have problem because we just don't know. There are uncertainties. You auction a mine, you don't know what is the value of the asset because it's underneath. You have some survey results, but that may not be enough. You have to create a model, a 3D model. So similarly, when you make huge investment of public money, if it's a $5 billion project, $10 billion project, I think it's very important to make digital twin a part of the contract. And if we do that, then what will happen when physical construction is happening? You'll be able to see, is it as per the digital twin? Is there a gap between the physical construction and the virtual model? I think I agree with the question. Government got to make investment. It will be extremely beneficial for the government. It will give transparency. It will help in cutting cost. It will also help in reducing the delivery of projects. So these days we talk about not just 3D, your fourth dimension could be cost. Your fifth dimension can be time. Your model can be 5D, not 3D. And these 5D models are very, very helpful. In fact, we did a project which was in Arunachal Pradesh. One of the companies, they wanted to know how can they get support of citizen for their project. Now, if you are building a hydropower station, let's say in Arunachal Pradesh, by the way, I'm sure you know some of the big projects, after investing several thousands of crores, those projects have been shelved because citizens feel that if hydropower stations are constructed in Arunachal Pradesh, then there is likelihood of big earthquake and people would die. In fact, there are people in villages who believe if you use water from the river for generating power, then if you use that water for agriculture, then the tomatoes and cabbages are going to be weak. Now, it's very important that you simulate that hydropower project and you show in your project how currently that area looks like and how it would look like, how the schools are going to come up, roads are going to come up, hospitals are going to come up, and how entertainment facilities, the parks are going to come up, and how life of citizen is going to be much better. And you go to showcase that you have built the digital twin of the hydropower project. And you can show in the television that you are shaking that hydropower project with 9 on the Richter scale or 10 on the Richter scale, and that the dam is not collapsing, the flood is not happening, people are not dying. They will give you support. So I think digital twin and virtual twin is a great concept, even to get buy-in of citizens. Today, many of our large projects do not get acceptance from citizens. And we can get better acceptance of citizen when we'll involve the citizen in the innovation project. It should not be the last moment we go and start constructing, because people will not have faith. Yes, Avi, what's the next question?
So that's it.
All right, friends, thank you very much for joining this course.
Thank you.
2 sessions.
Thank you all. Thank you for joining today's session. We will be sharing an email with the presentation deck as well as the video recording of this particular session. We appreciate your time. Thank you all. Thank you, professors, for joining this session.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Avi. Thank you, Rajesh.